This morning, we look at two different sporting codes which have caught the headlines for different reasons in the past couple of days. To discuss matters in rugby and cricket, we've roped in News 24 senior sports journalist and SABC sports commentator Khanyiso Tshwaku. Good morning, Khanyiso. Thank you so much for joining us on Sports on Morning Live.
Morning, Wasu, morning to the viewers.
Khanyiso, I want us to start by talking about the South African T20. Now, we saw the auction taking place, I think it was 2 days ago, and to a surprise of many people, we saw Andile Pehlokwayo as well as Themba Bavuma not being auctioned at this auction and basically are not going to be participating in the tournament just before the T20 World Cup. What could the reasons behind this be?
Well, look, it's the tricky nature of auctions where analytics are done, and you'd find that particular coaching staffs, analysts, and everyone involved will look at a specific of what they want from particular players and what they need to get from a particular individual or a group of players. So it became clear that those two individuals who fulfill two different but very important roles for the men's national T20 side are not picked. I mean, my colleagues from Khanyiso did write, I think it was around July, where they were one of the concerns, especially from a lot of Black African players, of the fact that there weren't any transformation targets for this particular tournament. And I think now when you look at the fact that there are only 6 Black African players who have made the cut in the auction, does not look great for the tournament. But again, I'm still trying to formulate an opinion on it. Themba Bavuma, for example, is a player that from a strike rate level at T20 has always garnered a lot of debate. I think his strike rate is just over 120. But there are players with a strike rate of 120 who are also in the tournament. I think Marcus Ackerman, who plays for the Dolphins, is an example. So I think one of the reasons that maybe Themba may not have made the cut is because of the high base price of 850,000 Rand, and there was an opportunity through the auction for him to lower that base price. I think the same would have been similar for Andile Pehlokwayo. To look at Andile Pehlokwayo, for example, I think he's in a bit of a dip in form that hasn't been able to arrest. And also, one of the concerns that I've had is that his batting hasn't come along in the manner that it should, because he is a very prodigiously talented all-rounder, but also in that same respect, he's an all-rounder, especially he's done all of the bowling, but I would feel that with the batting, he hasn't quite done himself justice. But look, I mean, those are two key national team players who, for all intents and purposes, could have and should have been picked up at the auction. But due to reasons that the particular franchises know, and I think at some point need to flesh out, they haven't picked up two regular national team players to actually take part in the SA20.
Transformation aside, these are though two good players that would ordinarily have been selected for teams of this nature.
No, they would. I mean, Themba Bavuma, as much as his strike rate is always a matter of debate. He actually is one of the few players who actually scored 100 in a T20 final. He did so for the Lions. I think the 2019 franchise T20 final, where he made 100 at the Wanderers in the match that the Lions won. So he has proven pedigree in terms of actually being able to bat in T20. But the thing with T20 cricket is that there's always a requirement from a team that you need to score as many runs in the least possible time, which is why sometimes you get a lot of left field players like your Donovan Ferreiras, your Evan Jones. These are players who, if people follow domestic cricket, not just first domestic cricket, you'd find that you what you'd call left field players. But when you look at their T20 numbers, you realize that for short format cricket, they're very effective cricketers. And when you look at a lot of the analytics of T20 cricket, a lot of coaches, a lot of performance analysts look at particular numbers like the amount of balls you face in a 20 game and the amount of runs that you can score of a particular number of balls, which is why even in the IPL, you'd find that there are a lot of players that season on season aren't necessarily players you'd associate with your stronger states in India, even in Australia, but because a particular player is able to score as many runs in a short number of balls, or is able to take a lot of wickets within that 24 ball space of the 4 overs that one needs to deliver in a T20 spell. So there are a lot of analytics that go into the selection of players, which is why sometimes you get players who what you'd call no-name players, but have decent enough T20 numbers.
Indeed, Khanyiso, I do want us to move the conversation to rugby before we run out of time. Now, Jacques Nienaber has finally spoken out on the Elton Yankees incident, which he was previously very quiet on. In your opinion, has the Springbok management and SA Rugby handled this whole Elton Yankees matter well?
Look, a national team is a national entity. And if there is a matter that affects the national team, therefore, it is incumbent on that particular body to be seen to be doing something. And I think in the initial stages, their silence was deafening. But as the week unfolded, they gradually spoke on the matter. They gradually spoke on the issue. I mean, even at yesterday's press conference, the question was posed, especially the fact that France stayed. Starting at 10, we was asked at the press conference whether was it a wise decision to leave out Elton, and he actually mentioned the fact that it was important that one needs to look after Elton Yankees' mental health because he will be under pressure to perform, and the last thing they want, especially with what is the pressure that he faces right now, it's going to be very unfair to actually have him on the field in what they deem to be a final in the form of the Rugby Championship game against Argentina that takes place at Kings Park on Saturday. So look, it's initially they were the silence was deafening, but also whenever issues like these arise, a national body needs to be mandated to be seen to be doing something, because at the end of the day, a sporting team is a microcosm of how society works. And people also look up to sporting teams to see whether their behaviors on and off the field are justified. Because if now, let's say SA Rugby is, to quote an example, to make a left field example, if SA Rugby does not does condone particular behaviors or doesn't condone particular behaviors, people will look at that on the field. Like I'll use a non-field example. If SA Rugby doesn't go forward to prevent fights on the field, when that filters down to lower level rugby, you get that players will do it, and they say that nobody's done it at the highest level. Why can't we do it? So it's important that, and applies across all sporting codes, that those particular national teams or those sporting codes need to conduct themselves in a manner that we don't call them society leaders, but set a behavioral benchmark standard on and off the field, so people can have something to latch on to from a societal perspective and a sporting perspective.
Khanyiso, I've got 30 seconds left for your response here, but given Elton's absence, we're now forced to look at a France staying in that fly half position and now move to a 6-2 split on the bench. Will this benefit us as South Africa?
Look, we can only see on Saturday. France State is playing his first test match as a fly-off since 2008 against Italy. He did a reasonably well on Saturday, but I think two things will be looked at: his passing game and how he actually makes sure that he gets the backs going. So it can only be seen, and hopefully there won't be too many serious injuries that will impact the use of the 6-2 split on Saturday.
Thank you so much for your time, Khanyiso. Do have a blessed day ahead.
Thank you very much.
That is Khanyiso Tshwaku, Sports 24 senior sports journalist and SABC sport commentator as well as analyst, talking all things rugby and cricket.